My son deceived me about our getaway, but stopping $70,000 finally restored my life. When Marcus texted that morning, my phone lit up at exactly 7 a.m. Mom, we had to cancel the family trip. Finances won't allow it. We'll reschedule for later. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I was his mother. I'd spent that whole summer picking up extra shifts at the hospital, telling myself we were all in this together, that they were tightening their belts just like I was. I pictured us on some simple little vacation one day. Nothing fancy, just being together. That hope kept me going when my knees ached and my back burned after long shifts. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. 3 weeks later, that hope died with a swipe of my finger. I was standing at my kitchen counter making coffee when a notification popped up on my phone. Instagram. I almost ignored it. But habit made me tap the app, thinking maybe Naomi had posted something from a school event. The first thing I saw was Chantel's face. She was on the deck of a massive cruise ship, turquoise water stretching out behind her like a postcard. She wore a coral dress that looked expensive enough to pay someone's rent. Sunglasses, jewelry, that practiced, perfect smile she always had ready for the camera. The caption read, "Unforgettable family vacation." My thumb froze over the screen. Unforgettable. I swiped to the next photo and felt my chest tighten. There was Marcus, standing next to a bar on the ship, wearing a crisp white linen shirt, tan and relaxed, holding a drink with a ridiculous little umbrella in it. No trace of financial problems in his face. No sign that he'd needed to cancel anything. Swipe. Jamal and Naomi posed by the pool under the blazing sun, wearing those overpriced straw hats cruise ships sell in their boutique shops. They looked happy. They looked carefree. They looked like they were exactly where they belonged. Swipe. A formal dinner table, white tablecloths, wine glasses, plates piled high. And then the photo that sliced me open. Marcus, Chantel, both grandkids, and Chantel's parents, Chuck and Eleanor, raising their champagne flutes together, smiling like a perfect advertisement for family happiness. Everyone but me. It wasn't that they were on the cruise. It was that they had told me it didn't exist anymore. They hadn't cancelled the trip. They had cancelled me. I stared at those pictures until the screen blurred. I looked for some clue that I was misunderstanding, some little detail that would rescue me from the truth. But there was no misunderstanding. They had lied. Calmly. Deliberately. Without shame. I didn't cry. I didn't call Marcus. I didn't send angry messages. I put my phone face down on the table, stood at my sink, and washed the same coffee cup twice. But something inside of me, something old and loyal and endlessly forgiving, cracked like thin glass. 3 weeks later, my phone buzzed again early in the morning. Mom, I urgently need $6,000. Credit card issue. I'll pay you back next month. I read the message once. Twice. 5 times. $6,000. Urgent, of course. Everything with Marcus was always urgent. Every crisis required immediate wiring, immediate sacrifice, immediate understanding from me. For 8 years, I had opened my account and drained it drop by drop because that's what a loving mother does. Or so I told myself. My fingers trembled as I began typing. There were 1,000 things I wanted to say, about the cruise, the lies, the way my stomach had twisted when I saw those photos, the way unforgettable felt like a knife. Instead, I wrote 4 words. Ask your wife's family. I stared at them for a long moment. Then I hit send. Those 4 words cost me 8 years of submission. They also bought me something I thought was lost forever. Freedom. The calls began within seconds. Marcus tried 17 times that day. My screen lit up with his name, over and over, like a fire alarm. I let it ring. Every missed call was a battle with decades of conditioning. Every time I didn't answer, I felt my hands shake and my spine straighten. Chantel sent a long message, full of dramatic punctuation and vague phrases. Misunderstanding, you're blowing things out of proportion, We should talk like adults. Not a single sentence mentioned the cruise. Not one word admitted the lie. I read halfway through, then swiped it away and deleted it. That afternoon, I walked into my bank. I closed the joint account I had shared with my son. I cancelled the extra cards with his and Chantel's names on them. I shut down the automatic transfers that had kept us chained together in an arrangement I once called love and now recognized as financial servitude. When I left the bank, the sky looked exactly the same. The traffic sounded the same. My neighborhood hadn't changed. But I had. For the first time in nearly a decade, I felt air filling my lungs without the weight of someone else's hand pressing on my throat. To understand how I reached that moment, how a 73-year-old black woman, a widow with a paid-off house and a modest pension, became the family ATM, you'd have to go back 8 years. Back to the day my husband Earl died. Back to the day I became not just a grieving widow, but an open vault. Earl and I built our lives slowly, the old-fashioned way, one long shift at a time. I worked for over 50 years as a certified nursing assistant and in housekeeping at the hospital. I scrubbed floors, changed sheets, lifted patients, wiped tears. My body carried the proof, aching knees, sore shoulders, calloused hands. I wasn't wealthy, but I was steady. We saved what we could, skipped the flashy things, paid off our little house, and tucked money aside like squirrels hiding nuts for winter. When Earl passed, the quiet in our house was louder than any noise. The bed felt too big. The meals tasted flat. I moved through my days like a ghost, surviving on routine and habit. Marcus was my only child. My whole heart. Watching him cry at his father's funeral nearly broke me in half. He looked so torn up, so fragile, that I clung to him the way he clung to me. 2 months after the funeral, he came over with Chantel. They sat on my living room sofa. Marcus took my hand with that gentle, practiced touch, his voice soft and sweet. "Mom, I hate to ask this," he began, "but we want to throw Naomi a really special sweet 16. She's been so emotional since Dad died. You know how sensitive she is. But with the funeral expenses and the economy, we're stretched thin. If you could just lend us $10,000, we'll pay you back in 6 months. I promise." I looked at Naomi's picture on the wall. My baby granddaughter, all braces and big eyes. Then at Chantel, who smiled the way people smile when they already know the answer. "It's just a temporary loan, Ruby," she said sweetly. "We want to give her a memory she'll treasure forever. You understand, right?" Oh, I understood. I understood grief. I understood wanting something good in the middle of sorrow. I understood needing to feel useful. In that moment, I didn't feel like a woman who had spent 53 years working herself tired. I felt like a mother who still had a purpose. I said yes. The next day, I transferred $10,000. Naomi's party was held at an upscale hall with colored lights, a DJ, and a chocolate fountain that didn't stop flowing all night. I sat at a back table in a dress I'd already worn 3 times, watching my granddaughter dance, laughing with her friends, her eyes glowing under the lights. Marcus clinked glasses with guests. Chantel circulated like a queen hosting a ball. Nobody said anything about paying me back. 6 months passed. Then 8. Then a year. The party was never mentioned again. The loan quietly transformed into a gift, and I never pushed. You don't nag your son while he's raising a family. You don't bring up money when everyone is going through a lot. Or so I told myself. Then came the next crisis. "Mom, we need to remodel the kitchen," Marcus said one Sunday after lunch. "Pipes are old, there's moisture, it's a safety issue. 8,000 should cover it. Just a loan, you know that." Not long after, Mom, Chantel's car is done. Completely dead. She needs a reliable vehicle for the kids. 12,000 and we'll be set. And later, public university isn't good enough for Jamal. He needs a better school if he's going to have a future. Tuition is 15,000 a year. Just for 3 years. "We'll pay you back. 8,000. 12,000. 45,000. I told myself each time, this is what mothers do. We sacrifice. We stand in the background and hold the ceiling up so everyone else can dance under the lights. What I didn't see then was the line between helping and being used. Marcus never said, I want. He always said, we need. It was never for him. It was always for the children, for the house, for stability. Every request came wrapped in a story about danger or guilt or noble sacrifice. Chantel's style was different. She didn't ask straight out. She just dropped little poison seeds. Oh, Ruby, it's a shame you can't come to Jamal's birthday at the club, she'd say. It's very formal. I know those places can be uncomfortable for you. But don't worry, we'll manage. Or, it's so hard seeing Naomi miss out on the Europe trip with her class. But not all kids have the same opportunities, right? I would sit there, my stomach twisting, thinking about the savings sitting in my account while my grandchildren lacked opportunities. So I'd open my purse. 3,000 for the class trip. 2,000 for the club membership. A little here for braces. A little there for tutors. A roof repair. A medical bill. Emergencies that somehow always appeared right after a party. A new phone. A shopping weekend. I looked away from the red flags. Like the brand new SUV in their driveway when I'd been told they were on the brink financially. Marcus called it a friend's car at first. 2 months later, Chantel was driving it full-time. Or the pictures Naomi posted from a beach resort weekend. Luxury pool, ocean views, fancy cocktails. At least $4,000, I guessed in my head, only weeks after I had wired money to cover overdue bills. But I shut my mouth. Not because I didn't see it, but because I was terrified. Terrified that if I said no, if I asked too many questions, those Sunday visits would stop. The calls would dry up. My only son, my grandchildren, the only family I had left, would drift away and leave me in a quiet house with nothing but a television to talk to. So I made myself small. I convinced myself that crumbs were a feast. A 10-minute phone call once a week. A rushed visit once a month. Seeing pictures of my grandkids on social media instead of my front porch. I told myself this was enough. I told myself I was lucky. I told myself this was what aging looked like. But a part of me was starving. The first real crack began 6 months before the cruise. On a day that didn't seem special at all. Naomi let it slip on a quick video call. Grandma, I've got to go. We're getting ready for Nana and Grandpa Holt's anniversary dinner. Nana and Grandpa Holt. I smiled and told her to enjoy. Then I hung up and called Marcus. Naomi mentioned dinner, I said lightly. What's going on? He hesitated. Oh, yeah. Chantel's folks are having a little anniversary thing. Very small. Very intimate. We didn't want you to feel out of place. You know how her family is. Very tight-knit. I told him I understood and hung up. I didn't understand. What I understood was that I hadn't even been an option. A week or so later, Marcus showed up with that haunted expression he could pull on like a jacket. Mom, I might lose my job, he said, sitting on my couch. The company is talking about layoffs. We're terrified. The kids need stability. We just need a cushion for a few months. Something so we can breathe. He paused, like it physically hurt him to speak. Could you lend us 20,000? 20,000. The room tilted a little. That number was more than anything he'd asked for at once. That's a lot of money, Marcus, I murmured. I know. If I had any other option, I wouldn't ask. You're the only person we can count on. You've always been there. Just 6 months. I'll pay you back in full. I swear. He looked like the boy who used to hold my hand crossing the street, not the grown man with a mortgage and teenagers. My heart broke like it always did. I said yes. At the bank, the young teller with square glasses asked 3 different times if I was sure I wanted to move that much money. It's for my son, I answered each time, as if that explained everything. I signed. Marcus called later, overflowing with relief. You took such a weight off my shoulders, Mom. I promise you, this is temporary. In 6 months, it'll all be squared away. You'll see. But what I saw in the months after was silence. Calls became shorter, then less frequent. Texts shrank to, all good, Mom. Busy. When I tried to video chat with the grandkids, they were tired, studying, out with friends. The more money I poured into that family, the further away they seemed to float. And still I said nothing. Until Dot knocked on my door. Dot lived in the apartment next to mine, 68, widowed, sharp-eyed, and impossibly direct. Where I smoothed everything over, she sliced right through it. One afternoon, she invited me over for coffee. Her place smelled like cinnamon and lemon cleaner, and there were plants in every window. Ruby, she said, stirring sugar into her mug, I've been watching you these last few months. You're quieter. Smaller. What's going on? The words tumbled out before I could stop them. I told her about the party for Naomi, the endless loans, the bills I never saw, the emergencies that never seemed to end. I told her how my heart leaped and sank with every call, how I waited for scraps of affection that only ever seemed to show up when someone needed money. I told her about the kitchen, the car, the roof, the university, the threat of layoffs, the 20,000, the SUV, the beach trip. I confessed my fear that if I stopped paying, I would lose them. Dot listened without interrupting once. When I finally ran out of words, she exhaled slowly. Ruby, she said quietly, you're not their mother. Not to them. You're a bank. And banks charge interest. What are you getting in return? I didn't know how to answer. The question lodged in my brain like a stone. A week later, it was Jamal's birthday. He was turning 21. I had bought him a nice leather wallet, feeling proud of myself for picking something grown-up and practical. I called Marcus to ask what time the family was getting together. Mom, he said, Jamal just wants something small this year. He's doing something with his friends. You know how young people are. I'll pick up your gift and give it to him. I hung up and sat at my kitchen table, holding that wallet in its box. The rage came quietly this time. Not loud and explosive, but cold and steady. How many birthdays had I paid for? How many parties, trips, and celebrations had I financed? And now I couldn't even sit in a corner chair and watch my grandson blow out his candles. That night, I opened my laptop. I pulled up years' worth of bank statements. I opened a blank spreadsheet and started listing everything I could remember. Naomi's Sweet 16, $10,000. Kitchen, emergency, $8,000. Chantel's car, $12,000. Jamal's university, 3 years, $45,000. Roof repair, $7,000. Class trip to Europe, $3,000. Club membership, $2,000. Tutors, braces, clothes, urgent doctor visits, fees, little hand-to-hand cash gifts, line after line. By the time I finished, my eyes were burning. The number at the bottom glowed up at me from the screen like an accusation. $62,300. $62,300 in 8 years. It was more than numbers. It was everything I had traded away. My security, my peace, my retirement, piece by piece for a version of family that barely included me. I stared at that total until the numbers blurred. Then something inside me hardened in a way it never had before. A steel door slid shut. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't beg God to keep my family close. I didn't call Marcus and ask why. Instead, I thought about Dot's words. You're a bank. What are you getting in return? A week later, Marcus called about the cancelled cruise. Mom, we'd planned a family trip, but we're going to have to scrap it. The economy is rough. We'll just spend a quiet summer at home instead. I remember the exact tone of his voice. Calm. Casual. A little regretful. Practiced. What cruise? I asked. You never mentioned it. Oh, it was just an idea. We thought about surprising you, but it's better to be realistic. No point going into debt over a trip. I let him talk. I said I understood. We hung up. Something deep inside me knew he was lying. But I decided to give him one last chance. One last benefit of the doubt. One last opportunity to prove that maybe, in some corner of his heart, I still mattered as more than a signature on a transfer form. The summer began. I stayed home, cleaning closets, making soups, reorganizing drawers that didn't need reorganizing. Dot invited me to a book club. I told her no, telling myself I was tired. She looked me in the eye and said, "You're not tired. You're waiting." She was right. 3 weeks into that quiet summer at home, my phone buzzed. Instagram again. I opened the app. And there she was, Chantel, in that coral dress, on a ship cutting through bright blue water. The caption, "Unforgettable family vacation." Photo after photo followed. Marcus, relaxed and sun-kissed. The kids posing by the pool. Fancy dinners. And then the group shot Chantel's parents. They hadn't cancelled the trip. They had erased me. As I went through those pictures, something much older than anger rose in me. Every excuse, every "we're struggling," every "we just want the kids to have what we didn't," suddenly sounded like one big, long lie. I set my phone down gently. Then I made a decision. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't send a single message demanding an explanation. I would do something much more effective. I would wait. Wait for the next emergency. Wait for the next urgent request. Wait for the moment they reached for me out of habit, assuming the door was still wide open. And when that moment came, I would close it. I spent the next 3 weeks in a strange calm. Hurt simmered in me, but beneath it was a new, unfamiliar feeling. Resolve. On the 22nd morning, at 7:15 a.m., the message arrived. "Mom, I urgently need $6,000. Credit card issue. I'll pay you back next month." Those 4 words I sent back, "Ask your wife's family," weren't just a refusal. They were the first brick in a new wall. After I closed the joint account and cancelled every card tied to my name, the silence didn't last long. Marcus showed up at my door one Saturday, ringing the bell like the building was on fire. When I opened, he stood there still tanned from his Caribbean vacation, wearing a crisp shirt I'd never seen before. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, trying to step inside. I stayed in the doorway. "We can talk right here," I replied. He blinked, thrown off by the fact that I hadn't automatically ushered him in, and offered coffee like always. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "You can't just close accounts. You can't ignore me. I'm your son." "Yes," I answered quietly. "You are my son. And I am your mother, not your bank. Not your bailout. Not the person you lie to and invite last, if at all." His jaw clenched. "If this is about the trip, I can explain. We were going to surprise you afterward." "Chantel." "Stop," I cut in. "Don't blame Chantel. You called me. You told me you'd canceled the trip because of money. You asked me for $6,000 3 weeks after you spent who knows how much on that cruise." He shifted, the nice guy mask slipping a little. "You're overreacting," he said. "I'm only asking to borrow. I've always paid you back." That was the lie that finally lit the fuse. "No," I said, my voice rising for the first time. "You have never repaid a single cent. Not $1. In 8 years. I did the math, Marcus. $62,300. I have every transfer written down. Every temporary loan. Every will pay you back in 6 months. So don't stand in my doorway and rewrite history." He stared at me, stunned. Maybe he never believed I kept records. Maybe he assumed an old woman couldn't add. "That was for the family," he muttered. "For the kids. For emergencies." What emergency? I asked quietly. Was the cruise? He had no answer. He tried a different angle. You can't do this. You'll end up alone. Old and alone. And when you need help, don't expect me to show up. A year before, those words would have crushed me. Now they just sounded small. I've already been alone, I replied. For years. I was alone every time you remembered me, only when something was due. I was alone every birthday I wasn't invited to. Alone every holiday you forgot I existed until you needed money. I'd rather be actually alone than surrounded by people who treat me like an ATM with arthritis. He shook his head, angry. You're selfish, he said. After everything we've done for you, Chantel always invites you, the kids calling, me visiting. And this is how you repay us. The audacity almost made me laugh. In his mind, every crumb of attention he tossed my way was a magnificent favor. Go home, Marcus, I said, suddenly exhausted. Go live the life you paid for with my savings. But you won't use me anymore. Not my account. Not my guilt. Not my love. He stared at me, waiting for me to break. I didn't. You'll regret this, he muttered as he walked away. I don't think so, I said softly after the door shut. That evening, Dot came over. I told her everything. She hugged me tight. What you did, she said, wasn't cruelty. It was self-respect. In the weeks that followed, the silence from Marcus and Chantel felt different than it had before. It was no longer a threat hanging over me. It was a shield. I began to fill my days with things that had nothing to do with them. I signed up for a painting class at the community center. I met other women my age, widows, divorced, estranged from their own children, or just tired of being taken for granted. We laughed more in that one little classroom than I had laughed in my house in years. I went on walks with Dot. I had coffee with another neighbor, Yvette, who had her own battle scars from family drama. We traded stories, not to stay stuck in them, but to understand we weren't alone. Then one day, I saw a brochure. It was in the window of a travel agency. Pictures of Rome, Florence, Venice. 10-day tours. Narrow streets, old stone buildings, plates of pasta I'd only ever seen in movies. Something fluttered in my chest. I walked inside. The agent, a young woman with a friendly face, pulled out a packet. This tour covers Rome, Florence, and Venice, she explained. Flights, hotels, some meals, guided tours. 10 days. How much? I asked. She told me the price. Months ago, I would have slammed that door shut in my own head. Too much, I would have said. Too selfish. Too unnecessary. I would have thought of Marcus, the kids, the next emergency that might require me to play savior again. Now, I thought about $62,300. I thought about cruise photos I hadn't been in. I thought about how many times I had delayed joy, how many times I had told myself, maybe later, while writing checks for everyone else's fun. I'll take it, I said. The agent blinked. You don't need time to think. I smiled. I've spent my whole life thinking, I said. It's time to do something. I paid the deposit, walked out of that office with a folder in my hands, and felt like I just bought myself a new life. I bought a new suitcase. I bought comfortable shoes, a small camera, and a notebook. I went into a clothing store and tried on dresses that actually made me feel visible, colorful, joyful, bold. I came home with a mustard-colored dress that made me look like I had sunshine wrapped around me. You look like a woman with plans, Dot said when I modeled it for her. I am, I answered. 2 weeks before my flight, an email landed in my inbox. The sender's name surprised me. Chuck Holt. Chantel's father. His message was simple and direct. He said he had recently learned what had happened. He hadn't known I'd been lied to about the cruise. If he had, he wrote, he would never have gone. He told me what Marcus and Chantel had done was wrong. He apologized. He said he and his wife had decided not to accept anything that came from my generosity anymore. I read it 3 times. My daughter-in-law's father had shown me more respect in one email than my own son had in years. I replied briefly, thanking him for his honesty and telling him I held no grudge against him or his wife. The day before my trip, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but the voice on the other end made my heart jump. Grandma. Jamal sounded older, nervous, like he'd been building up the courage to call. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For what? I asked gently. For everything, he said. For knowing they were using you and not saying anything. For standing there smiling in those pictures. For letting them treat you like a bank. They lied to you about the cruise. I heard the arguments afterward. I know about the money. I'm sorry. My throat tightened. Thank you for telling me, I said. That means more than you know. He hesitated. Grandma, they're in trouble financially. They always thought your money was part of the plan. They're angry at you now. They say you abandoned them. I didn't abandon them, I said slowly. I just stopped funding their denial. I know, he replied quickly. I'm not calling to ask you to help them. I don't want to be like them. I started looking for a job so I can move out. And if you ever want a relationship with me that's just between us, I'd like that. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but they didn't taste like bitterness. I'd like that too, I whispered. Very much. He told me to enjoy my trip. I promised I would. The next morning, Dot and Yvette took me to the airport. They hugged me at the entrance, stuffed snacks into my bag, and told me not to come back without pictures and stories. As I walked toward security, my new suitcase rolling behind me, I felt lighter than I had in over a decade. For once, I wasn't traveling for anyone else. I was traveling for myself. Italy was more than a trip. It was a mirror. In Rome, Florence, and Venice, I met a version of myself I had never really allowed to exist. On the first full day in Florence, I walked until my legs protested. I wandered cobbled streets, stepped into quiet churches, and spent nearly 20 minutes in front of a single painting at the Uffizi Gallery. No one tugged on my sleeve. No one complained they were bored. No one rushed me. It was just me and the art and the silence. I ate pasta in little trattorias where the waiters treated me like a welcome guest instead of a background prop. An older waiter with a gray mustache recommended a wine for strong women. I laughed, and for once the sound didn't feel forced. In Venice, I sat by the water and watched gondolas drift past. The canals shimmered in a color I'd never seen with my own eyes before. Families walked by. Couples held hands. Older women like me strolled at their own pace. I took out my notebook and began to write. I wrote not about Marcus or Chantel or the cruise, but about myself. About the girl I used to be. About the woman who had spent her entire life making sure everyone else was okay, until there was nothing left of her but an exhausted shell. I wrote one sentence that seemed to sum it all up. Giving until you disappear is not love. It's self-erasure. An Italian woman with snow-white hair sat near me on a bench. She asked where I was from. When I told her I was American and traveling alone, she nodded with approval. Brava, she said. My children want me to stay home and wait for them. I decided my last years belonged to me. We talked in broken English and gestures. Our lives were different, but our stories were the same. Women who had carried too much for too long and finally decided to put the load down. In Florence, I climbed the stairs to the top of the Duomo. It was a foolish decision for a woman my age with my knees, but I did it anyway. Halfway up, my lungs protested. At the top, the city opened up below me like a painting. Everything looked small from up there. The houses, the streets, my old fears. I asked a young couple to take my picture. When they handed the camera back, I barely recognized the woman on the screen. She looked free. Each day of the trip, I checked my phone only once to tell I was fine. I didn't scroll through social media. I didn't scan for messages from Marcus. I let the world shrink down to the place I was in and the people in front of me. Last night, our tour group had a farewell dinner in Rome. There were 15 of us from different countries. Our guide asked each person to share what the trip had meant to them. When it was my turn, I stood up slowly. This wasn't just a vacation to me, I said, my voice shaking. I came here after cutting off financial ties with my son because he was using me. For years, I thought giving everything I had made me a good mother. But somewhere along the way, I lost myself. This trip was me taking myself back. I learned that being alone by choice is better than being surrounded by people who only love what you give them. I learned I can still start over, even at 73. When I sat down, a woman from Canada came over and hugged me. I needed to hear that, she whispered. I've been doing the same thing with my own kids. Back in my hotel room that night, I finally turned my phone on fully. Dozens of messages poured in. Most were from Marcus and Chantel. Long blocks of text accusing me of selfishness, blaming me for their overdue bills, insisting that family helps family, and that I had abandoned my role. None of them said, "I'm sorry." None mentioned the cruise. None showed even a flicker of self-reflection. I deleted them all without replying. Then I saw a message from Jamal. "Grandma, I hope your trip has been amazing. Mom and Dad are upset, but that's not your problem. I got a job and I'm planning to move out. I don't want to live off anyone. When you get back, can we meet? Just us. I want to know you for real, not just as the person who fixes everything. I love you." I smiled through tears and wrote back. The trip was exactly what I needed. I'd love to see you when I get home. I'm proud of you. I love you too. When I landed back home, Dot and Yvette were waiting, cheering and waving like I'd won something. In a way, I had. At my door, we found a plain cardboard box. Inside were old cards I'd given Marcus, family photos, and a letter. Tucked in with the letter was a check for $5,000. The memo line said, "First payment." I unfolded the letter with shaking hands. Marcus had written it. He admitted the truth, that he hadn't just slipped. He had used me. He confessed that it was easier to lean on my money than to face his own financial recklessness. He said he finally understood how deeply he'd hurt me. He explained that he and Chantel were in therapy, that they were selling things, that he intended to pay back every dollar. He wrote that he didn't expect forgiveness and didn't deserve it. That the payments were about doing the right thing, not erasing the past. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, relief, skepticism, sadness. All of it swirled together. I put the letter and the check in a drawer. Then I did something Marcus had never done. I gave it time. In the months that followed, an envelope with $1,000 arrived at my mailbox regularly. I kept a log, not because I was counting on it, but because I had finally learned to keep track of my own life. Marcus and I met a few times for coffee in public places. No more joint accounts. No more unplanned visits. Our conversations were careful, honest, and short. He was no longer the center of my world. He was a man learning slowly to carry the weight of his own choices. Jamal started visiting me on his own. Naomi came sometimes too. We cooked together, talked about their dreams, and laughed over old stories. For the first time, I felt like they saw me as a person, not as a solution or a walking wallet, but as Ruby. Dot and Yvette became my chosen sisters. We took another trip together the next year, back to Italy, this time with them by my side. We walked the same streets, ate at little restaurants, and took pictures that were ours alone. Now, years after that first Instagram post that shattered me, my life is quiet but full. Marcus is still paying down what he owes. We will probably never go back to whatever we once were. That's all right. Because I am no longer living to keep my place in someone else's story. I am living mine. I thought I'd lost $62,300. What I really bought was my freedom. I bought back my dignity. My peace. The right to spend the years I have left without being held hostage by anyone's expectations, not even my own son's. If my story stirred something inside you, if you saw your own reflection in my mistakes or my awakening, then my pain has done something more than just hurt. It has been warned. It has reminded you of something you might have forgotten. You are not a bank. You are not a last resort. You are not obligated to bankrupt yourself, emotionally, financially, or spiritually, just because someone shares your blood. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to put yourself first. You are allowed to build a life that belongs to you, even if other people call you selfish for doing it. Because at the end of the day, there is exactly one person you are guaranteed to live with for the rest of your life. Yourself. That person deserves your loyalty before anyone else gets it. That person deserves your protection, your compassion, your respect. Even, especially, when family disagrees. If you are connected with this story, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your city in the comments. Your little gestures of support help me keep sharing more life stories like this one. And if you feel moved to send a super thanks, know that it helps me keep doing what I do, with love and respect. On your screen, you'll see 2 more life stories I think you'll enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Until then, take care of yourself first. You're the only you'll ever have.